were known for being a very well-liked mayor. That's not normal these days because you're going to have a lot of opposition on both sides, which you did, but not as much. Like, you're also known as a unifying force. In this day and time, we don't see that very often. What are your thoughts to know or see how divisive politics has become over the years? And perhaps it's always been that way. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, it's particularly ugly now. There's no question of that. But, you know, when I ran in a mayor's race, it was brutal. And there's negative ads, and it was horrible kind of things, you know, getting thrown around. And, you know, politics back to President Jefferson were horrible, you know. So you get that. But there seems to be sort of two schools of thought now. One is I just need 50% plus one. All I want to appeal to is my base. And there's none of this kind of reaching out and trying to find a way, you know, where can we agree and do something together? And I kind of always had a theory in politics: friends are better than enemies and peace is better than war. It doesn't mean that occasionally you won't have somebody that just hates you, and it doesn't mean that sometimes you don't have to get into a political fight, you know, to twist arms to get the votes to get an agenda through. But I just found it's a lot better to try to learn more and understand what makes people tick. I debated when I was in high school on the debate team, and in debate, they give you an issue and then you argue for it and you argue against it. So it forces you to look at both sides, and then as a prosecutor in a courtroom, you're doing the same thing in a courtroom. What's the other side going to do? Trying to understand that, I think, is helpful. And so, you know, I've learned I'm not always right in politics. Really, it's, you know, the policies are opinions. You know, whatever your view on abortion is or the debt, that's your opinion. That doesn't mean that it's an absolute truth. And so trying to understand that people can have different opinions and you just shouldn't shoot them because they disagree with you. Yeah. That'd be a healthier climate. You know, America has always had a leader emerge at the right time, and that moves a needle. You know, two completely different policy positions, Lyndon Johnson, Ronald Reagan. Forget which set of politics you'd like, they both succeeded in what they were doing. And what you hope is somebody that can kind of help unify and make people proud of the country or proud of the city and the state. And it'll come back.
Mm-hmm. Are you thinking about running at any point? Is that still on the table for you, running for any political office?
You know, they say in politics, never say never, but no. I mean, I'd long ago gave up the thought of the U.S. Senate. I'm not going to live up in D.C. and no longer want to move to Tallahassee. So you don't need to be mayor twice after 8 years. It's time for somebody else in there. So, you know, I guess the door's got a crack, but I can't envision what that would be.
You spoke about mayor. We're going to see a new one in a few months, the big vote in May. Do you have any advice for whoever gets that seat?
Yeah, I kind of have a standard set of advice, and one of them is what we just sort of talked about. Make sure you listen and understand the consequence of a decision. That too often in politics now, people fall in love with a policy and approach, and you need to understand how that's going to impact. You know, almost any government policy, at the end of the pipeline, it touches a human being, and you just need to understand, is that worth it? And you know, no matter who wins, they're not going to be right all the time. And you know, the best political advice I actually got was from a political columnist for the newspaper, and he said, I don't know why politicians just don't say, I made that mistake, I screwed that up, and because you're going to make a mistake, and don't try to spin it and hide it and distract us. Go ahead and say, hey, we missed that one. You know, hopefully I won't make that kind of mistake again, and go ahead and move on. But probably the most important is to try to listen and understand, and we'll see how it works out.
I want to go back to your days as mayor. What you did with the Park Service, it was such like forward thinking.
I used to go fishing about every month with Fred Franklin, who's a lawyer in town, and one of my best friends. Had dinner with him last night. And we went up Sisters Creek, which, you know, Heckscher Boulevard goes across it, and I'd never been up there. And I actually stopped fishing. It was just drop dead gorgeous. I mean, you had these oak islands, oak hammocks, you had these oyster shell things, dolphins were swimming along the side of the boat. And then I began envisioning that being developed in strip malls and condos and dry cleaners and, you know, car dealerships and that kind of a thing. So I came back to the office and I was talking about, this is one of the prettiest places I've ever seen in my life. And the general counsel, Rick Mullaney, said, well, why don't we see if we can buy it? And that really stuck. So we developed a theory, said let's try to make into parks and preserves about 10% of the remaining developable land in the county. And that was actually harder to measure than we thought. And we ended up getting about 10% of the total land area in Duval County and set aside as a park or preserve. And actually there was not much in the way of a fight or opposition to that. People kind of went with it. Every 4 to 6 years somebody wants to start selling that off and trying to get the money back. But it's probably something that'll endure, that we'll be really happy that we have that green space sort of set aside. So it proved well. We partnered with the Nature Conservancy, the Trust for Public Land, the state, the Water Management District, and I think it's a wonderful thing for the community. We've got about 100 square miles in Jacksonville that is park space. Now 100 square miles is bigger than the total land area of Miami or Newark. So it's a lot of space. Now, of course, Jacksonville is the biggest in land area in the continental United States. But yeah, I think it's a great amenity for the town, and that's one that some newspaper writers and columnists will say that's probably what'll stick in terms of a memory. But I think it's going to be terrific for the county for eternity, really.
Yeah, you had a hand in that. What's that feel like?
Yeah, it feels good, but I wasn't alone. I mean, it was a team that ended up implementing it, and really Rick Mullaney is who had the idea, and then we kind of polished it a little bit to make it work out and had some theories. The idea was to kind of buy the donuts, sort of encircle the inner portions of the town. And we did a great job on the northern part of the county and pockets in the southwest. And the southeast was a lot harder to do, although George Hodges' property, Mr. Hodges and his wife passed away within the last year or so, and we actually had that land now is going to become the city and state's. That's a couple thousand acres right along J. Turner Butler, which is really, to have stuff be developed all around it, to have that big preserve in the middle of it, kind of a central park. Yeah, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. You mentioned not getting pushback from that. You did from the Better Jacksonville plan. I actually saw a news clip, not just a clipping, but a video of it. You were actually on Channel 12, being interviewed by Jeannie at the time, and there were protests about that one. Do you remember that time?
Oh, yeah. That was another kind of utopia idea. What if, the growth was catching up with Jacksonville, the roads were getting more clogged, and so we did a utopia exercise, is what I used to call it, which is, how would you manage growth? Growth is healthy, to get more viewers or sell more hamburgers, but there's downsides to it. The older neighborhoods get left behind, the infrastructure doesn't keep up, the roads, water, sewer, and you pollute the land and the water and the air. So we kind of had three pieces to this, and turned out to be about $2.25 billion, which is probably about $5 billion in today's. And the only way to come up with that money was to do a referendum. And something interesting happened during that time. Politicians, one of the things you survey is it's called your popularity or favorability number. And mine were in like the 60s at the time, 60%, 64. When we did that campaign, mine went up into the 80s. And we won with about 58% of the vote. So 25% of the people that said we like the job Mayor Delaney's doing voted against our signature initiative. And it showed to me that people like to be led and they like to have a voice. And so with a referendum, they had a voice. And in politics, anything above 55% in an election is a landslide. So it was a landslide win. And as the years have gone by, I don't go a week without somebody thanking me for it and saying, hey, that was, they fixed this road, bought this park, cleaned up this land. The library downtown is one of the most spectacular buildings around, the baseball park, the arena, those were all part of that Better Jacksonville Plan referendum. And so I think the citizens of Jacksonville voted for themselves. They voted to invest in themselves. And so that was something. Mm-hmm. It was I actually had one of our security people would pick me up in the morning, and I'm doing Rotary Club speeches, and they drop me off at night 8 to 10. So that was a brutal couple of months between our announcement and the vote. But people are happy with it.
How old were your kids around that time? Do you remember?
It would be, they ranged from 19 to 4. Yeah, I mean, there are days when you're mayor or sheriff that you go out and you grab the newspaper and slip it to the recycle bin before your spouse sees it. But like I say, there's no free lunch for any job, and you volunteered to run for it, so you got to take the slings and arrows that go with it. And kind of speaking of that, I know that I have yet to have somebody come up to me at a restaurant or on the street and say anything bad. During that time, nobody would do that. And it says something about, I think, the character of Jacksonville. I mean, people would disagree and they'd write letters to the paper and would protest or wave the signs, but one-on-one, people were always kind. Never, even to this day, people are, thanks for your service. And that's kind of a nice thing.
Yeah. Do you think that's changed?
I don't know. I think if you try to be an inclusive leader, in Jacksonville, Mayor LaGuardia of New York used to say there's no Republican or Democratic way to pick up garbage. So many of the local issues aren't real partisan. Taxation is. I actually cut the property tax rate when I was mayor, but we did this big referendum that was all for capital projects. And there's a common ground. I used to say that I think we probably agree on about 90% of things. Let's focus on getting the 90 done, and we can argue about the 10% later. And, and some debates will never really be reconciled. And at UNF, we did a series we called Civil Discourse, where we would pick a controversial topic, and I would kind of MC it, and you'd get people on each side to debate, to kick it around. And I would open those by saying, we're not here to change anybody's mind. We're just hoping that you understand the opposite point of view more. And I think that's healthy. I mean, I may not understand why people in 2016 voted for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, but half the country did for each, and roughly. And so understanding that they've, what their motivations are, I think that's a healthy thing. There's long been a position that Jacksonville is undertaxed, that the tax rate ought to go up to be able to invest back into services and things like that. As I get older and get closer to retirement and fixed income, you go, maybe don't raise that tax rate, And so, people will change over time. Hopefully a leader tries to sell it and explain it. And I don't think this climate of just trying to get 50% plus one and to heck with the other side, I just don't think that'll endure forever. I think Americans are better than that.
Do you have any regrets during your time as mayor? Anything that eats away at you?
Oh, you always wish you'd done more, better, faster, this kind of a thing. Probably in that Better Jacksonville plan, the courthouse ended up getting bobbled, and my people blame my successor, and we were good friends. The Mayor Payton blames our people, and still turned out to be a good building. And but the costs exploded on that one. The Census Bureau said that Jacksonville had grown more in the 1990s than the projections had been, so we had to add another floor to it. 9/11 hit, so then you had to kind of heighten the security. Each of those were like $25 million ads, so it just kind of ran away a little bit. But it's a building you've got to have. Every county has to have a courthouse, and you need one that's not ostentation but has some dignity to it.
John, we just spoke about this. It was taxing, I'm sure, early on for you. You mentioned as mayor working these very long hours. What was that like with the young children? Well,
we had a rule that I wouldn't miss a kids event. So if there was a basketball game or a play or something like that, that was just automatic in the calendar. That's what I was going to do. And I tried to discourage much on a weekend so that we were home through the weekend. My wife did quit work, and she was a nurse, and it's just because the mayor's schedule's so erratic. But you can make it work. We had a family friend that had some trouble with a kid, and the parents were just terrific, wonderful people. And I was about 19, 20. I remember saying to my dad, God, I wonder what's going on or what happened. And my dad said, too much money, too little time. And that stuck with me. And so the time is important, even if it's just watching TV, even if you're kind of reading while you got a kids movie on or something like that. So I don't think my kids would say that they lost much in the way of time. We were able to manage it, but that's the important thing. Your kids are the most important thing in your life. You got to earn a living, so you're going to be gone a certain number of hours. And I missed the stray basketball game or something when you had to be out of town. But my wife and I got invited to the White House Christmas party. But my youngest daughter had a basketball game, a playoff game, and I said, well, we're not going to go. I kind of thought I'd get asked the next year, but I never got another invitation. And my wife says, I think we could have missed that game. She would have loved to have seen the White House Christmas tree, but I'm delighted to have skipped that one. Yeah.
Priorities.
Yeah, right. So that, again, once you had that rule that you were going to make your kids events, every now and then my wife would say, okay, look, you've been out too many nights this week. I think you need to be, we figured out a way to dial it back. And
so she checked you for it.
Oh yeah. And Mayor Godbold, who I actually ran against, and we were close before, and we're close immediately after, he said that he had said to his wife, you can go to anything you want to, and you don't have to go to anything you don't want to. And so my wife's a real introvert. She's not a public person, and she kind of opted, I'm going to be home with the kids. And so, there were some things that, we'd go, okay, look, we need to be together on this one. But, it was nice that we couldn't have really afforded it, but we knew it was a worthwhile investment. I almost didn't run for a second term because just how expensive the lifestyle was, but we made it work. Yeah.
That's what you do. You make it work. That's life, right?
Yeah. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. I told you I need the hope as a young parent, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, easy looking back and saying, oh, geez, we carried those credit cards with balances for so long, and how are we going to make this do? And the engine goes in the car, the air conditioning, and, you get through it. Yeah.
I want to talk about your time at UNF while I can, because you've accomplished so much, in life in general, but UNF, you did a lot as well, including doubling the campus size. And there's so much you could read into, but is there anything in particular that you were just really proud of during your time there that you'll never forget any of it, but anything in particular that stands out to you?
Well, we roughly tripled the endowment. We almost doubled the square footage of the space. Probably the thing that pops up the most is that we really invested in a disability center for students that have disabilities. And at one point we had more blind and deaf students than all the other Florida schools combined. A program developed for students with high-functioning autism. And by the time I left, the graduation rate and the grade point average for students that had registered with a disability, we had kids in puffer wheelchairs, where they had to puff to steer it. The graduation rate and the grade point average was almost identical to a traditional student that was there. And so the support services, then some faculty worked on that to really kind of develop that program. I think we had about 10 times as many students as when we started that had a certified disability, and blind, deaf, wheelchairs, autism, all kinds of things. And so we started getting students from all over the country that had heard that UNF really had done a successful job focusing on that. So it's kind of funny, that one program for that one segment of students are the things that kind of tends to jump out in my mind of what I was really proud of.
Yeah. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the direction in which things are going right now at UNF?
I actually was just there Friday I was just there for the president's installation, and who's a terrific guy, and the campus is gorgeous. I mean, I think it's a really, really neat place and a great asset for Northeast Florida. I'm now at Flagler College, and so, I was wondering how football coaches switch around and basketball coaches, and it's like having another child. You don't love the first one less, and you don't love the second one less. It's just like, it's kind of just another experience and a different way to deliver higher education. Yeah.
Why did you decide to leave back then? I remember the announcement in 2017, I believe, and you said the headlines was like John Delaney retiring. I said, he's not retiring, I'm sure. He might be leaving there, but he's not done.
Yeah, it was 2018 is when I announced retiring, which I shouldn't have used that word because people think that I'm, planting gardens and this sort of a thing. And I joined a law firm that Fred Franklin ran, who I mentioned earlier, and a lobbying firm together. And then Flagler contacted me. I was about 3 years in, and President Joyner had stepped out a year early of his contract. He was ready to retire. And they asked if I would do an interim. And I said, yeah. I said, I could see doing that. And I checked with the law firm and the lobbying firm, and they were fine. And they originally wanted a 2-year interim. And I said, you don't need an interim for 2 years. You really need to start the search, which takes a year for a president. And within a couple months, I'd just fallen in love with it. And the senior team is spectacular. The faculty are really hardworking. It's a great education. The employers love hiring the graduates. And so 1 year turned into we've got 4 to 6 years, I think, is what we're planning on doing. And it's been a lot of fun. I love the drive down here along A1A, so because I live at the beach. It's been a neat experience, yeah.
This campus is beautiful. There's you can't double this one, right? There's not a space. But what are your plans for Flagler?
Yes, you're right. The space, we're not looking to really grow the enrollment, which a UNF was, and here, at UNF you wanted to preserve the environment. That's set in a nature preserve. Here you really want to be respectful of St. Augustine's bend towards the historic, and so the building's 135 years old. The main building, the Ponce de Leon Hotel, old hotel. And it's been picked as one of the 10 prettiest campuses in the world, one of the 10 or 15 prettiest dining halls in the world. Tiffany is who installed the stained glass, the largest collection of stained glass installed in the world. Thomas Edison did the electricity, and it actually had electricity before the White House did. So it was, really a spectacular thing, and it's almost a church-like place to live and to study. So it's incredible. It's an incredible building, and every day I'll find a different. I didn't see that before. Or you'll see a carving, or you'll see something in the terracotta or the brick, and it's a special place. It's literally an international architectural icon, and easy to take those things for granted when they're in your backyard, but it's special. Yeah.
You want to give us some insight what you're working on currently for the school? Any projects in the works? Or?
Yeah, we're in the middle of about $100 million renovation, restoration to the main building. That we've gutted the eastern wing and taken it right down to the coquina and the studs, and then rebuilding it. And we're doing a lot of that kind of work on some of our older buildings on campus and upgrading the IT system. Going to try to do more into scholarships for need-based and merit students. And so it's in a different transition in its second 50 years, which we're in now. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
You are a graduate of Terry Parker High, a proud graduate of Duval County Public School System. I want to know what you think about the direction we're going in now with our school system, because we're seeing a lot of laws, bills being put in place right now. I don't want to say, let's get it right. So House Bill 1, expanding the school choice options for students in Florida. You know about that. The book bans forbidding classrooms and instruction of sexual orientation and gender identity. A lot of laws being put in place. Your thoughts on seeing all of this right now? Are we headed in the right direction?
Yeah, I haven't seen the laws yet, when they come on out. And, I tend to think free speech, it seems that each political party wants to ban the other speech. And I think it'll all work out. The legislative process and the court system will, I think, take us to the right place. So we'll just have to see how it shakes out.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, your family life. Tell us about it. You were going into it earlier. I had 3, but you're up to 5 grandbabies now, and soon everyone will be right here with Grandpa.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I've got 4 kids, 5 grandkids, and we helped raise a niece and a nephew, and so 4 of the 6 live near us at the beach. The 5th lives in San Marco, and then our newest grandbaby and our youngest daughter lives in Denver. I mean, she and her husband are going to move back next year, and she wants to live near us at the beach too. So can't wait to do more babysitting. That stuff's fun. Yeah.
Are you a hands-on type of grandfather?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I love spending time with them. I just can't even look at them enough. And I tell my daughters are the ones that have the kids, send more pictures, and they go a few days and don't have one posted on our little thing. I get mad. But, yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I try to take them for like a full day and give the parents a little relief. And they're fun. My longtime assistant worked with me for 33 years, Sherry Sands, and she would talk about grandkids. She said, there's no way to describe them, and there really isn't. You're responsible, but you're not, and you just see all the joy. You realize it's going to work out. They're going to grow up. It's going to, things will smooth over. So, yeah, it's been a blast. Family's a big deal.
As a parent of young kids, I've got to tell you, we love grandparents. We appreciate you guys. So thank you for being hands-on.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful to have parents and grandparents nearby. There's no question of that. Yeah. And ours, both my wife's parents and mine did a lot of help for us too.
Now, you walked in here with bright orange sneakers on, which we will get a shot of. And then I found out something new about you. You were a basketball player. You through high school and college. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, intramural stuff as it went on. But no, I joked I was 28 before I realized that a pair of shoes was not going to get me in the NBA. And But my middle brother, I'm the oldest, he and I were about a year and a half apart, and we played everything, tennis, basketball. My folks would never let us play football. They were worried about a neck injury, and they were prescient on that, I guess. But every other sport we could play. So yeah. So I've got some injuries that are old athletic injuries that are accumulating. So the prescription is to wear running shoes. So that's kind of what I'm wearing most of the time. I even wore them to a wedding because it helped with the pain in the feet. So funeral, I'll probably figure out dress shoes. Yeah.
Or maybe some darker shoes.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
see.
yeah.
John, is there anything that you want to add or mention, or you feel people need to know?
But nobody has a free lunch. Every job has got downsides to it, and I don't care whether you're making $1 million a year or you're digging ditches with not owning the ditch digging company. But there's no free lunch anywhere, and that's why they call it work. Yeah.